"I can fix this," the dirty boy whispered, looking at the luxury car. The millionaire burst into cruel laughter, but in seconds that boy would do the impossible. The engine of the Rolls-Royce Phantom exploded in smoke in the middle of Fifth Avenue, causing a traffic jam that stretched for 3 blocks. Henry Vance slammed his fist on the steering wheel so hard that the gold ring he wore scratched the imported leather. That car had cost $400,000, and now it was sitting like junk in broad daylight, exposing its vulnerability for everyone to see. "This can't be happening," he murmured, feeling sweat trickle down his forehead despite the air conditioning still working. Around him, drivers honked mercilessly, some shouting insults out of their windows. Henry wasn't used to being treated like this. He was the owner of Vance Imports, one of the largest luxury car companies in the country, and now his own car was betraying him in front of hundreds of people. He grabbed his phone and dialed the official dealership. "I need a tow truck now. My Phantom broke down on Fifth Avenue. Mr. Vance, our specialized tow truck is currently busy. It could take up to 2 hours, the operator replied with that irritating professional calm. 2 hours? Are you crazy? I'm not going to sit here for 2 hours being humiliated. I'm sorry, sir, but that's the estimated time. Henry hung up on her, feeling anger boil inside him. He looked in the rearview mirror and saw the line of cars forming, people filming with their cell phones. This would become news, memes, jokes. The great Henry Vance, luxury car expert, with his own car broken down on the street. That's when someone knocked on the window. Henry turned, ready to yell at whoever it was, but stopped when he saw a boy about 12 years old, covered in grease, wearing an old torn t-shirt. The messy hair fell over the brown eyes that stared at him with a strange intensity. "Do you need help?" the boy asked, his voice thin but firm. Henry opened the window just enough to respond. "Get out of here, kid. I don't accept charity." "I'm not asking for charity, sir. I'm offering help with the car." The laughter that escaped Henry's mouth was cruel and loud. "Help you? A dirty kid? You want to help with a Rolls-Royce Phantom?" Gabriel Smith was unfazed. He was already used to this kind of reaction. "I know what's happening. From the noise the engine made before it stopped and the smoke, it's definitely overheating in the cooling system. Probably the water pump is stuck." Henry stopped laughing. How could that kid know that? "Listen here, kid," he said, opening the door and stepping out of the car. He stood 6'1", almost double Gabriel's height. "I don't know what game you're playing, but that car is worth more than your house. I'm not letting you touch it with your dirty hands." "So do. You prefer to stay here until the tow truck arrives?" Gabriel asked, pointing to the growing line of cars, "because it looks like it's going to take a while." Henry looked around. People were already getting out of their cars complaining, some approaching with cell phones to film. This was turning into a public spectacle. "My dad works over there." Gabriel pointed to a small, dirty garage a few meters away. "We've been fixing cars for years. Can I at least take a look?" "Your dad?" Henry laughed again. "That backyard garage. What do you fix, a Honda Civic?" "This is a Rolls-Royce, kid. You have no idea about the complexity." At that moment, 3 men in suits approached. They were Henry's partners, who had been in a car right behind and had witnessed the whole scene. "Henry, what's going on?" Richard Taylor asked, trying not to laugh at the situation. "The Phantom broke down," Henry replied, embarrassed. "And this kid?" George Miller asked, looking Gabriel up and down with disdain. "He says he can fix it," Henry said, and the 3 burst into laughter. "Oh, I need to see this," Richard said, pulling out his phone to film. A kid from the rundown garage is going to fix the luxury car expert's Rolls-Royce." "Make your jokes," Gabriel said, his voice still calm but with a hint of challenge. "But if I fix it, how much will you pay me?" Henry looked at the boy with a mix of surprise and amusement. "You're challenging me? I'm offering a service. Every service has a price." "Fine." Henry said, crossing his arms. "If you, a 12-year-old kid, can get this $400,000 car running again, I'll pay you $5,000. The partners laughed even louder. $5,000, Henry? Have you lost your mind? Relax, he won't be able to do it, but it'll be funny to watch him try. Gabriel showed no emotion. $7,000. What? Henry almost choked. $7,000 is a fair price for the work and the public humiliation I'm suffering right now. Henry looked at his friends who were recording everything and laughing. This was already turning into content for their social media. All right, kid, $7,000. But when you fail, you clean my car for free for a month. Deal? Gabriel extended his dirty hand. Deal. Henry looked at the hand in disgust, but shook it anyway, just to keep the show going. You can start your spectacle, he said, making a sarcastic bow. Gabriel wasted no time, ran to the garage, and returned with a toolbox that looked bigger than he was. He placed it on the ground next to the Rolls-Royce and opened the hood with an ease that surprised even Henry. Is he really going to do this? George murmured, filming every move. Gabriel dove into the engine as if he knew every part by heart. His small hands moved with surgical precision, disconnecting hoses, checking connections, testing components. There was no hesitation, no wasted movement. See, he said after a few minutes, pointing to a specific part. Stuck water pump, just like I said. Henry stepped closer, incredulous. He had actually diagnosed the problem correctly. Diagnosing is easy, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. Fixing it is another story. Watch. Gabriel simply replied. What happened in the next 15 minutes left everyone in silence. Gabriel disassembled the water pump with impressive speed, cleaned the components, replaced a part he had brought from the shop, and reassembled everything with the precision of a watchmaker. His fingers moved so fast that it was hard to keep up. This is impossible, Richard murmured, stopping his laughter. He's a kid who knows what he's doing, George added, genuinely impressed. Henry said nothing, just observing, feeling something strange in his chest. It wasn't admiration. He refused to admit that. It was confusion. How could that kid know so much? Done, Gabriel said, closing the hood and wiping his hands on an old rag. You can start it. You can start it, Henry repeated incredulously. Do you really think it will start? Start the car, Henry, Richard said. Let's see if the kid is a genius or a fraud. Henry got into the car with his heart racing. He didn't know what he wanted more, for the car to work or not to work. He turned the key, and the Rolls-Royce Phantom roared to life perfectly, smooth and powerful, just like the day it left the factory. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the people honking stopped to process what they had just witnessed. No, it can't be, Henry murmured, looking at the dashboard that showed all systems functioning perfectly. Gabriel closed his toolbox. $7,000 as agreed. Henry got out of the car, his mind still trying to process what had happened. The partners were left speechless, their phones still recording. How did you learn to do this? Henry asked. And for the first time, there was no mockery in his voice. My dad taught me, Gabriel replied. I've been working with him since I was 7. I've fixed over 200 cars. 200 cars. You're 12 years old, and how old are you? 40, 50, and you couldn't even diagnose the problem with your own car. The response was like a slap in the face. The partners laughed, but this time it wasn't at Gabriel. It was at Henry. Pay the kid, Henry, Richard said. He won. Henry took out his wallet, still dazed, counted $7,000 in bills, and handed it to Gabriel, who took the money and counted it again in front of everyone. Thank you for the business, sir, he said, putting the money in his pocket. Wait, Henry, he said, holding the boy's arm. Where did you learn about Rolls-Royce? These cars have complex systems, cutting-edge technology. I learned by reading. I have all the technical manuals at home. My dad always says that knowledge doesn't take up space. Technical manuals for Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, Lamborghini, Bugatti, all that I can find on the internet. I study every day after school. Henry looked at that boy, dirty with grease, who had just earned $7,000, $1,000, fixing in 15 minutes a problem that the dealership would take hours to resolve, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Humility. "What's your name?" he asked. "Gabriel Smith." "Gabriel Smith," Henry repeated. "You impressed me today." "Thank you, sir." Gabriel grabbed his toolbox and started walking back to the shop. Henry watched him leave, feeling that something had changed that day. He had been defeated by a child, publicly humiliated, but strangely he didn't feel anger. "Henry," George called, "did you see what I saw? I saw a 12-year-old kid fixing a Rolls-Royce in 15 minutes. "No," George showed his phone. "I saw this on the screen." The video Richard had recorded already had 15,000 views and was being shared frantically. People weren't laughing at Henry. They were impressed with Gabriel. "The kid went viral," Richard said. "Look at the comments." Henry read some. "This kid is a genius. I want him fixing my car. Talent has no age." The millionaire had to swallow his pride. Henry closed his eyes. That day should have been humiliating, but somehow he felt he had learned something important. "Let's go," he said, getting into the Rolls-Royce, which was now running perfectly. "I have work to do." But as he drove back to the office, he couldn't stop thinking about the kid, Gabriel Smith, a name he wouldn't forget anytime soon. What Henry didn't know was that this encounter was just the beginning. Fate was about to intertwine their lives in a way neither of them could imagine. Gabriel entered the shop with the $7,000 in his pocket, his heart still racing from the adrenaline. Charles Smith, his father, was under an old Volkswagen Beetle, only his legs visible. The sound of tools echoed in the small, cramped space, which served as both a workshop and almost a home for the two. "Dad, you won't believe what happened," Gabriel said, pulling the money from his pocket. Charles slid out from under the car, his face marked with wrinkles from a lifetime of hard work. He was 42 years old, but looked a decade older. He wiped his hands on a rag and looked at his son with those tired, yet loving eyes. "What did you get into now, boy?" "I fixed a Rolls-Royce Phantom on the street and earned this." Gabriel showed the money, the bills still new and fragrant. Charles's eyes widened. $7,000. "Gabriel, where did you get this money?" "I swear, Dad." A Rolls-Royce broke down in front of the shop. The owner was an arrogant man who laughed at me. He bet I couldn't fix it. I did it in 15 minutes. Charles took the money, counting the bills as if they might disappear at any moment. "Son, this is 4 months' rent. This is food. On the table. This is proof that you learned well from me," Gabriel added, smiling. Tears welled up in Charles's eyes. He hugged his son tightly, feeling immense pride mixed with deep sadness. Gabriel was brilliant, talented, capable of things he himself could never achieve. But all of this, he was wasting away in a neighborhood garage, fixing old cars for peanuts. "You deserve more than this, Gabriel," Charles said, his voice choked. "You deserve to study at a good school, have real teachers, not be stuck here in this dirty garage." "Dad, don't say that. You taught me everything. You're the best teacher I could have, but I can't give you what you need. I can't afford private school, technical courses, college." "We'll manage, Dad. With this money, we can start saving." Charles nodded, wiping his eyes. "You're right. Let's save. Let's make this money grow." What neither of them knew was that at that very moment, Henry Vance was in his luxury office, watching the video of Gabriel fixing the Rolls-Royce go viral on social media. It had already reached 500,000 views and was continuing to grow exponentially. "This is amazing," Mariana Vance said, entering her father's office with her phone in hand. At 17, she was everything Henry expected from an intelligent, beautiful, well-mannered daughter, but lately she had been questioning her father's values more and more. "Dad, did you see the video? It has over 500,000 views." "I did," Henry replied curtly, shuffling papers on his desk. "And don't you think it's incredible that a 12-year-old is fixing a Rolls-Royce? I think he got lucky. He probably saw the problem before on another car." "Luck, Dad. He diagnosed the problem just by hearing the noise. That's pure talent." Henry sighed. He didn't like to admit it, but his daughter was right. That kid had something special, something he himself didn't have, despite all his millions. "What do you want me to do, Mariana? Give him a trophy?" "I want you to recognize talent when you see it. That kid could be working for you, learning more, growing. He's a 12-year-old child. There are labor laws, Mariana. I can't just hire a kid. But you could help. You could pay for a course, a better school." "Why would I do that?" Mariana looked at her father with disappointment. "Because you have the power to change his life, because you have enough money that you wouldn't even miss it, because it would be the right thing to do." Henry fell silent. His daughter had the annoying gift of always touching the right wounds. "I'll think about it," he finally said. "Don't think too long. Opportunities like this don't wait." Mariana left the office, leaving Henry alone with his thoughts. He went back to watching the video, paying attention to every detail, the way Gabriel moved, the confidence in his gestures, the surgical precision. That wasn't luck. It was years of practice, study, and dedication. And then he saw something he hadn't noticed before. In the background of the video, for a few seconds, the garage where Gabriel had picked up the tools appeared. It was a tiny place, with old equipment, peeling walls, but above the door there was a sign, "Smith & Son, General Mechanics." "Smith & Son," Henry murmured, "so the father really is a mechanic." He picked up his phone and called his personal assistant. "Leonard, I need you to investigate a garage for me. Smith & Son is located on 5th Avenue, near where my car broke down today." "Investigate, sir? What do you want to know?" "Everything. How long they've been in business, financial situation, owner's history. I want a complete report by tomorrow morning." "Yes, sir." Henry hung up and went back to watching the video. It was nearing 1 million views. Now people were sharing, commenting, making memes. Gabriel Smith had become a small internet celebrity in a matter of hours. That night, in the simple house that Charles and Gabriel shared in a remote neighborhood, father and son were having rice and eggs for dinner when Gabriel's phone started ringing incessantly. "What's happening?" Charles asked, worried. Gabriel picked up the phone, and his eyes widened. "Dad, today's video has 1 million views." "What? How so?" "People are sharing it. Look at the comments." Charles read some, incredulous. "This kid is more competent than many trained mechanics. Someone hire this kid before another country steals him. The US is wasting talent as always. I want to take my car to him for repairs." "Son, this is serious. People are recognizing you." "But that's good, isn't it? It could bring more customers to the garage." Charles was about to respond when there was a knock at the door. It was late past 10 p.m. He went to answer cautiously and found an elegant woman in her 40s holding a microphone with a camera behind her. "Good evening. I'm Patricia Moore from City TV. We're looking for Gabriel Smith, the boy who fixed the Rolls-Royce today." Charles froze. "TV, how did you find out where we live?" "The video went viral, sir. We did some research and found the garage's address. The neighbors pointed us to your house. Can we do a quick interview with Gabriel?" "I don't know. He's a minor." "Dad, it's okay." Gabriel appeared behind his father. "I want to talk," the reporter smiled. "Great. It can be right here at the door. It'll be quick." They turned on the cameras and Patricia began. "I'm here with Gabriel Smith, the 12-year-old boy who went viral today for fixing a Rolls-Royce Phantom on 5th Avenue. Gabriel, how did you learn to do this? Gabriel looked at the camera naturally. My dad has been teaching me since I was little. He's the best mechanic there is. Charles felt his eyes fill with tears again. And how did you know what to do on such a complex car? I study. Read technical manuals, watch videos, practice every day. Every car is a machine, and every machine has logic. It's just about understanding how the parts work together. Do you plan to pursue a career in this field? I do. I want to study mechanical engineering and open my own company one day. But first, I need to help my dad grow the garage we have. What would you say to the people watching? Gabriel thought for a moment. That talent isn't about money or expensive schools. It's about dedication. My dad taught me that. He never had much, but he always had wisdom. The interview lasted only 5 minutes, but when it aired on the evening news, it had an even greater impact. People not only admired Gabriel's skill, but also identified with his story of overcoming adversity. Henry watched the interview at home. Alone in his enormous living room, he heard every word from Gabriel, saw the way the boy spoke about his father with love and respect. He felt something strange in his chest, a mix of admiration and envy. His own son had died 5 years ago in a car accident. He was the same age as Gabriel at the time. Since then, Henry had thrown himself into work, accumulating wealth but losing the ability to feel. Mary was all he had left, but he knew he was losing her too with his arrogance and coldness. Dad, did you see the interview? Mary entered the room. I did. So what? Don't you feel like helping, like doing something? Henry remained silent for a long moment. What do you want me to do, Mary? I don't know. But you have resources, contacts, power. That boy has talent. Together you could... What could we do? I don't need a partner, much less a 12-year-old boy. It's not about you needing him, it's about him needing you. And why would that be my problem? Mary looked at her father with sadness. Because before you became this cold and calculating person, you were a good man. Remember when Ryan was alive, you said you wanted to leave a legacy, to make a difference in people's lives. The name of his deceased son hit Henry like a punch. Don't talk about Ryan. Someone needs to talk. Do you think he would be proud of what you've become? A man who has everything, but shares nothing. Get out of here, Mary. No, you need to hear this. That boy is the age Ryan was when he died. He has talent, dreams, a future. Can you help him reach that future? I said to leave, Henry shouted, standing up from the armchair. Mary stepped back, tears in her eyes. You're impossible, she said before running out. Henry was alone again, trembling with anger and pain. He hated when Mary brought up that subject. He hated remembering the son he lost. He hated feeling anything, but that night, when he finally went to sleep, he dreamed of Ryan. In the dream, his son was alive, smiling, playing with toy cars, and beside him was Gabriel, teaching Ryan how to fix the little machines. Dad, Ryan said in the dream, Gabriel is my friend. You're going to help him, right? Henry woke up sweating, his heart racing. At 3 a.m. he grabbed his phone and reviewed the report that Leonardo had sent about Smith & Son Garage, founded 15 years ago. Owner, Charles Smith, 42 years old, widower. Wife passed away 3 years ago due to health complications. One son, Gabriel Smith, 12 years old. Financial situation, precarious. Debts with suppliers, overdue rent, obsolete equipment. Average monthly revenue, $3,500. Reputation in the neighborhood, excellent. Known for honesty and good work, $3,500 a month. Henry spent more than that on a single meal at expensive restaurants. And that man was raising a genius on that ridiculous amount. He picked up his phone and typed a message to Leonardo. I want to schedule a meeting with Charles Smith tomorrow in my office. He hesitated before sending. What exactly did he want? Why was he doing this? He couldn't answer those questions, but he pressed send anyway. Leonardo replied. Immediately, "Yes, sir. Preferred time noon." And Leonardo added, "Sir, please be polite when inviting. It's not an order, it's an invitation." "Understood, sir." Henry hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling. He felt he was about to make a decision that would change everything. He didn't know if it was good or bad, but for the first time in 5 years, he felt like he was doing something right. The next morning, Charles received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Charles Smith. Good morning. My name is Leonardo Andrade. I'm the assistant to Mr. Henry Vance." Charles almost dropped the phone. "Henry Vance, the owner of the Rolls-Royce." "Exactly. Mr. Vance would like to invite you for a meeting today at noon in our office." "What would the meeting be about?" "About your son, sir, and about opportunities." Charles looked at Gabriel, who was organizing tools in the corner of the garage. "Opportunities?" "Yes, sir." Mr. Vance was very impressed with Gabriel's talent and would like to discuss some possibilities. "Can I confirm your attendance?" Charles didn't know if he should trust, but something in Leonardo's polite voice convinced him. "All right. Noon where?" Leonardo provided the address, and Charles wrote it down with trembling hands. "Dad, who was that?" Gabriel asked when he hung up. "It was the man with the Rolls-Royce. He wants to talk to us." "About what?" "I don't know, son, but I think we're about to find out." At noon, Charles and Gabriel stood in front of the most luxurious office building in New York. Mirrored glass, security at the door, imported cars in the parking lot. They felt completely out of place, with their simple clothes and grease-stained hands that no soap could clean completely. "Dad, I'm scared," Gabriel whispered. "Me too, son, but let's go in." The security guard stopped them at the door. "Can I help you?" "We have a meeting with Mr. Henry Vance," Charles said, trying to sound confident. The guard checked a list and nodded. "4th floor, elevator to the right." As they rode up in the mirrored elevator, Charles and Gabriel saw their reflections. 2 simple, hard-working men in a world that wasn't made for them. But when the doors opened, Leonardo greeted them with a genuine smile. "Mr. Charles, Gabriel, welcome. Please follow me." They were taken to a conference room with a panoramic view of the city. Henry I was standing, looking out the window with my back to them. "Mr. Vance, your guests have arrived," Leonardo announced before leaving. Henry turned slowly. For the first time, Charles saw the man who had humiliated his son, but he also saw something in his eyes that he did not expect. "Respect, Mr. Charles Gabriel. Thank you for coming," Henry said, pointing to the chairs. "Please, have a seat. We have much to discuss." And as they sat down, none of them imagined that this conversation would change their lives forever. The conference room seemed even larger with the heavy silence that settled after Henry's invitation to sit. Charles pulled a chair for Gabriel and then sat down next to his son, their sweaty hands resting on their knees. They had never been in such a luxurious place. The solid wood table gleamed under the indirect light. The paintings on the walls probably cost more than the entire workshop, and the panoramic view of New York through the floor-to-ceiling windows was breathtaking. Henry stood for a few seconds, studying the two. Father and son wore the same simple clothes from the day before, clean, but worn from time and work. Both of their hands bore grease stains that no soap could completely remove, permanent marks of those who work with their hands. They were the absolute opposite of everything that office represented. "Would you like some water, coffee, juice?" Henry offered, trying to break the ice. "Water is fine, thank you," Charles replied, his voice coming out lower than he intended. Henry poured 3 glasses of water from a crystal pitcher and finally sat down across from them. Gabriel observed every movement with those attentive eyes that missed no detail, the same attention he applied when studying engines and machines. Mr. Charles Gabriel, Henry began, bringing his hands together on the table. I called you here because I need to discuss a few things. First, about yesterday. Charles straightened in his chair, prepared to defend his son if necessary. I was disrespectful, arrogant. I treated your son as if he were incapable, when in fact he is extraordinarily talented. Henry paused, the words clearly costing him his pride. I want to apologize to both of you. The apology took Charles completely by surprise. He had expected many things, perhaps a lawsuit for Gabriel having touched the car without formal authorization, maybe an offer to return the money, or even a threat, but a genuine apology from a man like Henry Vance that he did not expect. Mr. Vance, Charles said carefully, my son did honest work. You paid the agreed amount. There is nothing to apologize for. Oh, yes, Henry insisted. I paid for the service, but I did not pay for the humiliation, the laughter, for treating him as if he were less capable just because he is a child and poor. The word poor echoed in the room like a gunshot. Gabriel lowered his eyes, and Charles felt his anger begin to boil, but he controlled himself. We are poor, Mr. Vance, Gabriel said suddenly, raising his eyes with a dignity that surprised even Henry. But that does not mean we are stupid. My father taught me that dignity has no price and knowledge does not need money to be acquired. Henry smiled, a sad smile, almost melancholic. Your father taught well, better than many rich parents manage to teach their children. There was a moment of silence where the three men, because Gabriel, even at 12 years old, carried himself like a man, measured each other with their eyes. But I did not call you here just to apologize, Henry continued, opening a folder that was on the table. I investigated your workshop. Charles tensed. Investigated? Yes, I know you have debts with suppliers, that the rent is 3 months overdue, that the equipment is outdated, and that the monthly revenue barely covers basic expenses. That is none of your business, Charles said, his voice now coming out harsher. I know, and normally it wouldn't be, but after seeing your son's talent, after watching the interview last night, after seeing how you speak of each other with love and respect, Henry paused, taking a deep breath. I have a proposal. What kind of proposal? Charles asked suspiciously. Henry opened the folder and took out several documents. I want to invest in your workshop. I want to modernize it, equip it with cutting-edge tools, create a specialized training center for luxury cars. Charles's eyes widened. Invest? Why? Because America is full of wasted talent, people like Gabriel who could be changing the world, but are stuck in situations that do not allow for growth. I have the money, you have the talent. Together we could create something extraordinary. And what do you gain from this? Charles asked, still suspicious. In his experience, rich people never did anything without gaining something in return. Profit sharing. 30% of the workshop would be mine. You keep 70% and full control of operations. I just invest money and bring high-end clients. Gabriel looked at his father, trying to read his expression. Charles was processing the information, clearly torn between the opportunity and distrust. How much investment are we talking about? Charles asked. $500,000 initial, Henry replied calmly. Charles almost fell out of his chair. $500,000 was more money than he had seen in his entire life combined. $500,000, he stammered. To start, modern equipment, complete renovation of the space, specialized training for you and Gabriel, marketing, official certifications. I want to turn Smith & Son into the reference for luxury vehicle maintenance in New York. But Mr. Vance, Gabriel interjected, why would you do this? You said yesterday that we are a fifth-rate workshop. Henry closed his eyes, ashamed of his own words. I said terrible things yesterday, things that my son, my late son, would be ashamed to hear. Your son? Charles asked softly. Ryan. He died 5 years ago in a car accident. He was 12 years old, the same age as Gabriel. The room fell into absolute silence. Henry felt a tightness in his heart. He knew what it was like to lose a loved one. He had lost his wife 3 years ago. "I'm so sorry," Charles said sincerely. "Thank you." Henry took a deep breath. Ryan was passionate about cars. He spent hours watching mechanic videos, taking apart toys to understand how they worked. He wanted to be a mechanical engineer when he grew up. Gabriel felt a lump in his throat. That was exactly what he wanted. "When I saw your son yesterday," Henry continued, his voice choked, "when I saw the way he works, the passion in his eyes, the precision in his movements, I saw Ryan. I saw what my son could have been if he had had the chance to grow up." Tears began to stream down Henry's face, a man who hadn't cried in years, who had built a shield of coldness and arrogance to avoid feeling the pain of loss. "That's why I want to invest," he said, wiping his eyes without shame. "I can't bring my son back, but I can help another father give his son the opportunities I never managed to give mine." Charles was also crying now. 2 widowers, 2 fathers who knew the pain of loss, sitting in a luxury room, sharing a sorrow that money could never heal. "Mr. Vance," Charles said, his voice trembling, "I don't know what to say. Just say you accept. Say you will let me do this, not for me, but for Gabriel, for the extraordinary talent he has." Gabriel looked at his father, waiting for his decision. Charles was clearly struggling. Internally, pride told him to refuse, to not accept charity, but love for his son told him to accept, to give Gabriel the opportunities he deserved. "Dad," Gabriel said softly, "remember what you always say, that we can't let pride get in the way of progress." Charles looked at his son and smiled through his tears. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best teacher in the world," Gabriel replied, taking his father's hand. Charles took a deep breath and looked at Henry. "We have conditions." "Of course, what are they?" "First, my son continues studying. School comes before the workshop, always." "I completely agree," Henry said. "In fact, I want to add that to the contract. Gabriel will receive a full scholarship at one of the best private schools in New York." Charles's eyes widened again. "Would you really do that?" "I would. Talent without education is a waste. Gabriel needs a strong theoretical foundation to complement his practical skills." "Second condition," Charles continued, "we maintain control of the operations. You invest, but do not interfere in the day-to-day." "Perfect. I don't understand mechanics as much as you do. It would be foolish of me to interfere." "Third condition," Charles said, "but seriously now, if at any point you treat my son with disrespect again, the deal ends right there, no matter how much money is involved." Henry extended his hand. "You have my word, and if I break that word, you can take everything, the workshop, the equipment, the clients, everything." Charles shook his hand, feeling that he was making a deal that would change everything. "So do we have a deal?" Henry asked. "We do," Charles replied. Gabriel smiled, that wide and genuine child's smile that still believed the world could be good. "Great," Henry said, picking up the documents. "I'll ask my lawyer to prepare the contracts. In the meantime, I want you to make a list of everything you need. Tools, equipment, renovations, no budget limit. I want to start as soon as possible." "Mr. Vance," Gabriel said, "can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Why did you change yesterday? You were different." Henry smiled sadly. "My daughter Mary told me something last night. She said, 'Before you became this cold and calculating person, you were a good man. Ryan would be proud.' And would he be?" Gabriel asked with the brutal honesty that only children possess. "No, but of the man I'm trying to be today. I hope so." At that moment, the door opened and Mary walked in without knocking. At 17, she had the same determination as her father, but with a heart that had not yet been hardened by life. "Dad, I heard they were here and—" She stopped upon seeing Charles and Gabriel. "Sorry, I didn't know you were still in a meeting." "It's all right, Mary. Come here. I want to introduce you. This is Charles Smith and his son, Gabriel." Mary approached and extended her hand to both with a genuine smile. "Nice to meet you both in person. I'm your biggest fan, Gabriel. I've watched the video about 20 times. Gabriel turned red. "Thank you. You're amazing. At 12 years old, doing things that experienced mechanics can't." "How did you learn all this?" "My dad taught me," Gabriel replied, always giving credit to his father. Mary looked at Charles with respect. "So, you are the real genius here." Charles shook his head, embarrassed. No, Gabriel has a special gift." "You both are special," Mary said. "And Dad, are you really going to invest in their workshop?" "I am," Henry replied, pride in his voice. Mary hugged her father, something she hadn't done in months. "I'm proud of you, Dad. You're doing the right thing." Henry felt his eyes welling up again. He didn't realize he was so hungry for his daughter's approval until that moment. "Gabriel," Mary said, turning her attention back to the boy, "can I make you a request?" "Of course." "Could you teach me about mechanics, about cars? I've always wanted to learn, but my dad never thought I would be interested." Henry interrupted, surprised. "Dad, I've always been interested, but you always said that wasn't a thing for girls, remember?" Henry felt embarrassed, another one of his prejudiced attitudes being exposed. "I would love to teach," Gabriel said, smiling. "My dad always says that shared knowledge is multiplied knowledge." "Your dad is very wise," Mary said, looking at Charles with admiration. Charles was red with a mix of embarrassment and pride. He had never received so much positive attention in his life. "Well," Henry said, standing up, "I think we have a lot of work ahead of us." "Charles, Gabriel, how about we have lunch together? We can discuss the details of the project while we eat. Mr. Vance?" "We are not dressed appropriately for a fine restaurant," Charles said, looking at his own clothes. "Then let's eat somewhere casual. I know a great diner that serves home-cooked meals. No frills. Dad is going to eat at a diner. I need to photograph this," Mary joked. They left the office together, the millionaire, his daughter, the mechanic, and the prodigy. To the eyes of the employees who saw them pass, they were just 4 people, but for each of them, it was the beginning of something that would completely change their lives. At the simple diner that Henry chose, to everyone's surprise, including his own, they sat at a plastic table and ordered executive plates. While they waited for the food, they talked about plans for the workshop. "How long would it take to make the renovations?" Charles asked. "With the right team, about 3 months, but we can do it in stages so you don't lose customers during the work." 3 months, Charles repeated, hardly believing that in 3 months his small workshop could turn into something completely different. "And Gabriel," Henry said, "have you thought about which school you would like to attend?" "School?" Gabriel blinked, confused. "The scholarship I mentioned. You can choose any private school in New York." Gabriel looked at his dad, who nodded encouragingly. "I've always wanted to study at Lincoln High School. They have a strong program in STEM and a robotics lab." "Lincoln is great," Mary said. "I have friends who study there. You'll love it." "So it's decided," Henry said. "I'll call them on Monday to schedule the enrollment." The food arrived, and they ate together, talking about cars, dreams, and life. Henry realized he hadn't had such a pleasurable meal in years, without formalities, without falseness, just genuine people sharing a moment. "Mr. Vance," Gabriel said in the middle of lunch, "can I ask one more thing?" "Of course. And you can call me Henry." "Henry?" Gabriel tested the name. "Do you really think I can be great? Like make a difference?" Henry put his fork down and looked into the boy's eyes. Gabriel, I know many engineers, many technicians, many specialists, but I've never seen anyone with your natural talent. If you keep studying, practicing, and growing, I have no doubt that one day you will revolutionize the automotive industry. Revolutionize is a strong word, Gabriel said, but his eyes sparkled. It's the right word. You are 12 years old and already doing things that most people only learn at 30. Imagine where you'll be at 20, at 30. I want to open my own company, Gabriel confessed. I want to create a training center for young mechanics. I want to teach other kids like me that knowledge can change everything. Henry felt his heart tighten. It was exactly the kind of dream that Ryan would have had. Then let's make it happen, he said. Let's turn your workshop into the first step of that dream. They finished lunch and returned to the office to sign the preliminary papers. Leonardo had prepared everything with impressive speed: contracts, terms, financial projections. This is a lot to read, Charles said, looking at the stack of documents. Take it home, Henry suggested. Show it to a lawyer if you want. You don't need to sign anything today. I want you to be completely comfortable with the terms. Do you trust that I won't disappear with the papers, Charles? If you were dishonest, you wouldn't have raised a son like Gabriel. I trust you completely. Charles took the documents, still processing everything that had happened that day. A few hours ago, he was in his broken workshop, filled with doubts and without hope. Now he had a millionaire partner, a promise of a complete renovation, and a scholarship for his son. Mr. Henry, Charles corrected. Thank you. Really? You don't know what this means to us? I do, Henry replied. It means hope. It means future. It means that talents will no longer be wasted. Gabriel and Mary had stepped aside to talk, and Henry could hear them laughing as Gabriel explained something about engines using animated gestures. They hit it off, Charles observed. Mary needs real friends. She's surrounded by fake people at her school. Gabriel, too. He's always been a bit lonely for being different from the other boys. So I think we've done more than just a business deal today, Henry said. We've made a family. The word family echoed in the hearts of both men. 2 widowers, 2 fathers, 2 men who knew the pain of loss and the power of love. Dad, Gabriel called, Mary wants to come to the workshop tomorrow to see how we work. Can she? Of course, Charles replied. So it's set, Mary said excitedly. Tomorrow morning I'll show up in clothes that can get dirty. Daughter, Henry said, are you sure? It's hard, dirty work. Dad, I want to learn, and I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. Henry looked at his daughter as if he were seeing her for the first time. When had she grown up so much? When had she become this strong and determined woman? Then go, he said, smiling. But be careful. Gabriel is a demanding teacher. I'm patient, Gabriel protested. My dad is the demanding one. They all laughed, and at that moment the differences in class, money, and status disappeared. They were just people connected by extraordinary circumstances. Charles and Gabriel said their goodbyes and left the building carrying the documents and a future completely different from what they had imagined. In the elevator, going down alone, father and son looked at each other and started to laugh. That nervous laugh of someone who can't believe what's happening. Dad, is this real? Gabriel asked. I think so, son. I think so. $500,000, $1,000, private school, workshop renovation, and a partner who could have been our enemy but turned into almost a friend. They left the building and walked back to the workshop. They didn't have money for a taxi, and the bus was part of their routine. But this time, the walk felt different. The sun shone brighter, the streets looked cleaner, and the future that had always seemed impossible was now within reach. Back at the office, Henry looked. As she looked out the window, seeing Charles and Gabriel walking away on foot. Father, Mary said, approaching, did you do the right thing today? I hope so. No, wait. You know you did. I saw it in your eyes when you spoke to them. You were alive again, for the first time since Ryan didn't finish that sentence, Henry gently asked. I need to finish. Since Ryan died, you've become an empty shell. You worked, earned money, but didn't live. Today, you lived. Henry embraced his daughter, letting the tears fall freely. Thank you for not giving up on me, he said. I will never give up on you, Father. I just needed you to remember who you really are. As father and daughter embraced on the 4th floor, Charles and Gabriel entered the small, dirty workshop, which would soon be transformed into something extraordinary. Father, Gabriel said, do you think Henry is sincere, son? Men who cry for dead children don't lie about second chances. He is sincere, so our lives will really change. Charles grabbed his son by the shoulders. Our lives have already changed, Gabriel. The moment you had the courage to offer to fix that car, the moment you proved your worth, everything changed. The rest is just consequence. Gabriel hugged his father, feeling for the first time that maybe, just maybe, dreams could really come true. What neither of them knew was that this partnership would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, that envious people would try to destroy what they were building, and that the real challenge was yet to come. But at that moment, embraced in the old workshop that would be renewed, everything seemed possible. Saturday morning began with Mary Vance arriving at Santos & Sons workshop at exactly 7:30 a.m., wearing an old pair of jeans and a simple t-shirt that was probably the cheapest outfit she owned. She had her hair tied back in a ponytail and a backpack on her back. Charles and Gabriel were already working. Their routine started at 6 a.m. every day, without exception. Good morning, she called from the door, a bit shy as she saw the inside of the workshop for the first time. Gabriel came out from under an old Golf, wiping his hands on a rag. Mary, you actually came. Of course I came, I promised, didn't I? Charles approached, also wiping his hands. Good morning, Mary. Does your father know you're here? He does. In fact, he sent this. She pulled a thermal bag from her backpack. Breakfast. He said you probably work early without eating properly. Charles opened the bag and found fresh bread, assorted cold cuts, freshly squeezed orange juice, and fruits. It was more food than he and Gabriel ate in an entire week. This is very kind, he said, touched by the gesture. My father is trying, Mary explained. Last night he couldn't stop talking about you guys, about the plans for the workshop. I haven't seen him this excited in years. They set up an improvised breakfast on an old table in the corner of the workshop. While they ate, Gabriel explained to Mary about the cars. They were fixing, 3 in total, all popular models with simple problems. This Golf here belongs to Mrs. Johnson, Gabriel pointed out. She's a cleaner at 3 different houses. The car has a problem with the starter motor. The part costs $200 new, but I found a used one in good condition for $50. She doesn't have much money to pay. Do you give discounts for people who can't pay? Mary asked. We charge fairly, Charles explained. Mrs. Johnson works hard. I won't charge her the same as I would someone who has more means, but that way you don't lose money. Money we can always earn more of, Charles said simply. Dignity and a clear conscience are priceless. Mary looked at those 2 men, father and son, who had so little but gave so much, and felt ashamed of how she had always lived, surrounded by luxury but empty of purpose. Can I help? She asked. Of course, Gabriel perked up. Come on, I'll teach you the basics. They spent the entire morning working together. Gabriel was patient, explaining every tool, every component, every procedure. Mary learned quickly and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty, literally. In 2 hours, she was covered in grease and sweat, but smiling more than she had in months. This is amazing, she said after helping Gabriel change the oil in a car. It's so real. Not theory in books, it's practice. That's why I love it. Gabriel said, Every car is a different problem, a new challenge. It's like solving puzzles, but puzzles that help real people. Charles watched the two young people working and smiled. Gabriel had always been solitary. His schoolmates thought he was strange for preferring to study engines over playing video games. But there he was, excited, teaching, making friends. Around noon, a black BMW pulled up in front of the workshop. It was a recent model, immaculate, completely out of the ordinary for the cars that usually showed up there. A man in his 50s, wearing an expensive suit and an arrogant posture, got out of the car. It was Richard Taylor, one of Henry's partners, who had witnessed the scene with the Rolls-Royce. "Excuse me," he said, entering the workshop as if stepping into trash. "I'm looking for the so-called prodigy boy." Gabriel stood up, recognizing the man immediately. "That's me, sir." Richard looked Gabriel up and down with barely concealed disdain. "So it's really you, the kid who went viral fixing Henry's car?" "Yes, sir. Can I help you with something?" "You can. My BMW has a strange noise coming from the engine. I've taken it to 3 specialized workshops, and no one could identify the problem." "And you came here?" Charles asked, surprised. "I came to test if the kid is really good or if it was just luck with the Rolls-Royce." The way he said luck made it clear he was there to challenge, not to genuinely ask for help. "Can I take a look?" Gabriel said calmly. "How much do you charge?" "It depends on the problem, but first I need to diagnose it." Richard tossed the car keys to Gabriel with disdain. "Let's see what you can do." Gabriel caught the keys and walked over to the BMW. He started the engine and listened intently, his head slightly tilted, eyes closed. After a minute, he turned it off and opened the hood. "How long to figure it out?" Richard asked, glancing at his watch ostentatiously. "I've already figured it out," Gabriel replied. "The problem is with the alternator belt tensioner. It's loose, which is why the belt vibrates and makes noise. It's not serious yet, but if you don't fix it, it will damage the belt and could cause bigger issues." Richard fell silent, clearly surprised. "How do you know that?" "By the sound. The vibration of the belt has a specific frequency. I learned to identify it by listening." "And can you fix it?" "I can, but not here. I need specific equipment to adjust the tensioner with the right precision. If I do it wrong, it could get worse." "So you can't fix it," Richard said with a victorious smile, as if he had proven Gabriel was a fraud. "I didn't say that. I said I can't fix it here with the equipment we have now, but I can recommend a specialized BMW workshop that has the right tools. Or you can wait a few weeks until our renovation is complete." "A few weeks? What renovation?" It was Charles who answered. "We're partnering with Henry Vance. He's going to invest in modernizing the workshop." Richard's expression changed completely. "Henry is investing here?" "Yes, $500,000 initially." Richard looked visibly disturbed by the information. "Henry didn't tell me anything about this." "Maybe because it's none of your business," Mary said, emerging from the back of the workshop with a displeased expression. She had recognized Richard immediately. He often dined at her house and always looked at her with that invasive gaze that made her uncomfortable. "Mary," Richard exclaimed, wide-eyed, "what are you doing here and in this state?" She looked at her own grease-stained hands and smiled proudly. "I'm learning mechanics. Any problem with that?" "Your father knows you're here, right? And approves. Unlike you, who apparently came here to conduct a quality test as if you owned the truth." Richard turned red with anger. "Mary, this isn't a place for you. Come on, I'll take you home." "No, thank you. I'm perfectly fine here, Richard." "I insist." "And I refuse. Now, if you don't need Gabriel's services anymore, please remove your car. There are other clients waiting." It was a lie, there was no one waiting. But Mary had learned to use her father's authoritative tone when necessary. Richard looked at everyone there, the prodigy, the mechanic father, and his partner's daughter completely at ease in that humble environment, and felt something he didn't expect to feel. Envy. Envy of the simplicity, authenticity, and genuine connection those people had. "How much do I owe you for the consultation?" he asked Gabriel, pulling out his wallet. "You don't owe me anything. Diagnosing isn't a service. It's a courtesy." "Courtesy?" Richard repeated incredulously. "Yes, sir. You will only pay me if I actually fix something." Richard took out $200 and placed it on the counter. "Then this is for honesty. Seems to be in short supply in the world." Gabriel took the money but didn't feel happy about it. It felt more like a disguised insult than a compliment. Richard left the workshop, got into the BMW and drove away without looking back. As soon as the car disappeared, Mary exploded. What a horrible man. He's always been like this, arrogant, thinking he's better than everyone. "Do you know him well?" Charles asked. "Unfortunately, he's been my father's partner for 10 years. He's always been fake, always trying to take advantage of everything. I don't trust him at all." "Then why is your father his partner?" Gabriel asked. "Because Richard is good at making money, but that doesn't make him a good person." Charles put the $200 in the drawer. "Well, at least he paid. Money is money, no matter where it comes from." "Father, you're right," Gabriel agreed. "We can't choose our clients based on their personalities." They returned to work, but Richard's visit had left a bitter taste in the air. Mary, especially, was worried. She knew Richard well enough to know he didn't do anything without ulterior motives. By the end of the afternoon, when Mary was already preparing to leave, Henry arrived at the workshop, driving himself, which was rare for him, and he had a worried expression. "Father, what are you doing here?" Mary asked. "I need to talk to Charles. In private." Charles looked at Gabriel and Mary. "Can you take a walk? Go get ice cream or something?" Gabriel was about to protest, but Mary grabbed him by the arm. "Come on, I'll pay. Let them talk." When they were alone, Henry got straight to the point. "Was Richard here today?" "He was. How do you know?" "He called me. Said he's worried about my investment in a backyard workshop without proper structure." Charles felt anger rising. Backyard workshop. He came here to test Gabriel, and my son diagnosed the problem with his BMW in a minute. "I know. I'm not questioning your competence. I'm warning you that Richard will try to sabotage our partnership." "Sabotage? Why?" "Because Richard doesn't like it when I do something without consulting him first, and because he envies anything good that happens to other people." "What can he do?" Henry sighed. "He has influence, knows people in the automotive industry, in regulatory bodies, in suppliers. If he wants to make it difficult for you to get certifications, parts, permits, he can do it." Charles sat down, feeling the weight of reality. "So you're saying our partnership is threatened before it even starts?" "No, I'm saying it's going to be harder than we imagined, but not impossible." "Henry, look around. I have doubts, old equipment, clients who can barely pay. Your partner can easily decide to destroy me." "No, if—" "I won't back down," Henry said with determination. "Richard is my partner, but that doesn't mean he calls the shots. I've made my decision. I'm going to invest in your workshop, and no one is going to stop me. But what if this affects your business? What if you lose money because of me? Charles, I have more money than I could ever spend in 3 lifetimes. I could lose a few million and not even feel a difference in my standard of living. But you guys will feel every penny of that investment. You will turn this into something meaningful. How can you be so sure?" "Because I saw Gabriel work. I saw the way you raised him. I saw the values you have. I've invested millions in companies that looked promising on paper but failed because the people behind them lacked character. You have that, and it's worth more than any business plan." Charles felt his eyes welling up. "Why do you trust us so much?" "Because you reminded me of what really matters. Because you gave me hope again." Because Henry paused, his voice choking. Helping you is the way I found to honor my son. Ryan would have loved to meet Gabriel. He would have loved to see a kid with so much talent getting the opportunities he never had. The two men fell silent for a moment, each processing their own emotions. "So, what do we do about Richard?" Charles finally asked. "We do our job well, so well that even he won't be able to deny the quality. We will make this workshop so good that when people hear Smith & Son, they will think of excellence. It will take time. We have talent, and now we have resources. That's enough." Henry extended his hand again. "Are we in this together?" Charles shook his hand firmly. "We are." When Gabriel and Mary returned from getting ice cream, they found the two men smiling and discussing plans for the renovation. "All set?" Mary asked. "All set," Henry confirmed. "By the way, I brought something for you." He went to the car and returned with a huge box. "Gabriel, is this for you?" Gabriel opened the box, and his eyes widened. It was technical manuals, dozens of them, from every imaginable luxury car brand: Ferrari, Lamborghini, Porsche, Bentley, Aston Martin. Some were rare editions, others were recent updates that cost hundreds of dollars each. "This must have cost a fortune," Charles said, mouth agape. "It did, but seeing Gabriel's face right now is priceless." Gabriel was leafing through the manuals with reverence, as if they were sacred treasures. "Thank you, Henry. Thank you so much." "No, Gabriel, thank you for reminding me why. I got into this business so many years ago. It wasn't for the money. It was for the passion, for machines, for the desire to understand how things work." Mary watched her father interacting with Gabriel and Charles, noticing a change in him. His shoulders were less tense, his smile more genuine, his eyes had a sparkle she hadn't seen in years. Those two humble mechanics were doing for her father what years of therapy hadn't accomplished. They were making him feel human again. "Dad," she said, "I think this was the best decision you've ever made." "I think so, too, sweetheart. I really do." That night, after Henry and Mary left, Charles and Gabriel stayed at the workshop late, studying the new manuals. The dim light from the single lamp illuminated their heads bent over the books, father and son absorbing knowledge like sponges. "Dad," Gabriel said at one point, "do you think we can do everything Henry is expecting?" Charles looked at his 12-year-old son, tired eyes filled with determination, small hands more skilled than their age. "Son, we've already achieved something that many people never accomplish in their entire lives." "What?" "We made someone believe in us. And when someone believes, everything becomes possible." Gabriel smiled and went back to studying the manuals. He had so much to learn, so much to do, so much to prove, but for the first time in his life, he felt he had the right tools. Not just the physical ones, but the emotional ones too. He had a father who supported him, a mentor who believed in him, and a friend who saw him as an equal. The future was still uncertain. Richard Taylor represented a real threat. The renovation of the workshop would be a huge challenge. The new school would be a difficult adjustment. But none of that mattered now, because for the first time, Gabriel Smith believed he could be more than just a poor kid from a neighborhood workshop. He could be an engineer, a businessman, a teacher. He could be everything he dreamed of. And dreams, when fueled by hard work and supported by the right people, have a strange way of becoming reality. On the other side of the city, in a luxurious apartment, Richard Taylor was making calls. Calls to parts suppliers, to city inspectors, to acquaintances in strategic positions. "There's a workshop called Smith & Son," he said in each call. "I want you to make things difficult for them, nothing illegal, but anything within the law that can delay, complicate, or frustrate." He was planting seeds of sabotage that would soon germinate into real problems. But Richard didn't know he was underestimating something fundamental: the strength of people who have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The determination of a father who would fight to his last breath for his son, and the talent of a boy destined to change the world, whether powerful men liked it or not. War was just beginning, and Gabriel Smith, at 12 years old, was about to learn that talent attracts not only admiration, but also envy. And envy in the wrong hands can be a deadly weapon. Gabriel had never felt as happy as he did on the first Monday at Lincoln High School. The new uniform still smelled of fresh fabric, the backpack was filled with notebooks without a single line written, and the wide hallways felt like a completely different world from the public school he had attended before. In class, in physics, the teacher presented a complex problem about thermodynamics applied to combustion engines. Gabriel solved it in 3 minutes, leaving the entire class in silence. "Impressive, Gabriel," the teacher said. "You really understand this deeply." During the break, classmates approached with curiosity. "You're the kid from the video, right? The one who fixed the Rolls-Royce?" For the first time in his life, Gabriel felt accepted, admired. The joy lasted until 11:15 a.m. when his phone vibrated with a call from Charles. "Dad," he answered, stepping out of the classroom, "is everything okay?" The voice that responded was trembling, broken. "Son, the workshop has been shut down." Gabriel's world stopped. "What? How can it be shut down?" "The city inspectors arrived half an hour ago. They said we have structural irregularities, that we don't have the correct permits, that the equipment doesn't meet the standards." Charles paused, and Gabriel could hear the desperation in his breath. "Son, they sealed everything. We can't work or even go in." "But that doesn't make sense. The workshop has always functioned." "I know, but they have documents, official stamps. They say someone made an anonymous complaint." Gabriel felt the anger boil. Anonymous complaint. Richard Taylor. It had to be him. "Dad, have you—" "He called Henry?" "I called. He's on his way." "But Dad," Charles's voice faltered, "without the workshop we have nothing. The clients are leaving. The doubts remain." "It'll be okay, Dad. I'm coming back now." "No, you stay at school. Education comes first." "But Dad, please let me handle this." Gabriel hung up with a shattered heart. He couldn't focus on any more classes. At 3 p.m., when school ended, he ran to the bus stop. When he got off near the workshop, what he saw made him stop completely. There was a crowd, at least 50 people were gathered in front of Smith & Son, holding signs, shouting, protesting. The workshop was sealed with yellow tape, but the people didn't care. "Justice for Gabriel," the sign said. "Talent is not a crime. Let the workshop operate." Gabriel approached, stunned, recognizing Mrs. Johnson, the customer with the Honda Civic, with tears in her eyes, Mr. Arnold, the bakery owner, Mrs. Luciana, a retired teacher, dozens of people from the neighborhood he had known his whole life. "Gabriel," Mrs. Johnson ran to hug him. "My boy, what an injustice." "Mrs. Johnson, what is all this?" "When we found out they closed the workshop we organized, your father and you have helped everyone here for years. You fixed our cars when we had no money. Now it's our turn to help you." Gabriel felt his eyes fill with tears. For years he had felt invisible, just another poor kid doing what he could. But those people had seen him, had cared. He entered the workshop, stepping past the closure tape. Charles was sitting on a bench, his head in his hands, while Henry was talking to a man in a suit who was taking notes on a tablet. "Gabriel," Henry saw him, "you should be at school." "I couldn't stay, not when my dad is losing everything." Charles lifted his head, his eyes red. "Son." Gabriel hugged his father tightly, feeling him tremble. "We're going to fix this, Dad. Together." Henry approached. "I already know who's behind this." "Richard," Gabriel said. It wasn't a question. He used contacts in the city, paid inspectors to find irregularities. Technically, everything is legal. The workshop really didn't have all the updated permits, but the timing was absurdly quick, clearly orchestrated. "And now?" Charles asked hopelessly. "Now we fight. I brought Julian," he pointed to the lawyer, "an expert in administrative law. We're going to contest every irregularity, prove malfeasance in the inspection, but this will take weeks, and in the meantime, we can't work." "I'll cover the expenses," Henry said. "I'm a partner, remember? If the workshop closes, I lose too." Mary rushed in, phone in hand. "Dad, you need to see this." She showed the screen. It was a video going viral, filmed in the crowd. It showed Mrs. Johnson speaking to the camera. "These men, Charles and Gabriel Smith, are heroes of this neighborhood. When my car broke down and I had no money, they fixed it for free. This workshop is not a business, it's hope for people who have nowhere to turn." The video already had 500,000 views. "People are on our side," Mary said. "The whole country is seeing this injustice." Gabriel looked out the window. The crowd had grown. Now there were TV cameras, reporters, cars honking in support. "This is what happens when you touch real lives," Henry said. "You matter to a lot of people." Julian closed the tablet. "I have good news. I managed to get an emergency hearing. A judge agreed to prioritize it, considering the social impact. Hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. "Tomorrow?" Charles's eyes widened. "When there's public interest, justice can be swift. And with this commotion," he pointed outside, "no judge will want to be the villain." The door burst open. Richard Taylor entered with 2 security guards. "Henry, we need to talk now." "We have nothing to talk about." "We do. You're destroying our business because of this ridiculous project." "Watch your next words," Henry said, his voice dangerous. "Or what? Are you going to hit me?" Richard laughed. "You're pathetic. Ever since your son died, you've become a shadow. Now you found this kid and think you can make up for it. Newsflash, Ryan is dead. No charity will bring him back." The silence was absolute. Henry turned pale, trembling. It was Charles who stood up, placing himself between the two. "Get out of my workshop." "Your workshop?" Richard laughed. "This one is shut down." "I said get out." Richard invaded Charles's space. "You, a failed mechanic who can barely—" He didn't finish. Gabriel, 12 years old and 5 feet tall, stepped in front of his father, staring down Richard. "You don't talk about my dad like that." The courage caught Richard off guard. "Get out of the way, kid." "No, my dad is worth more than you will ever be. He taught me honesty, hard work, dignity. What do you teach? How to destroy people out of envy?" "Envy of you?" Richard laughed nervously. "I have millions. Why, would you envy a dirty mechanic from the streets? Because I have something that money can't buy." Gabriel replied firmly, "People who truly love me, a father who would give his life for me, friends who came to defend our workshop. What do you have? Paid security and a rotten reputation." The crowd outside erupted in applause. Richard turned red. "You will regret this." "No, I won't." Henry finally spoke beside Gabriel. "Because tomorrow I will present evidence that you bribed inspectors. I have recordings, transfers, witnesses. You will lose everything." Richard paled. "You have no proof." Henry played an audio on his phone. Richard's voice. "I need you to create difficulties for Smith and Son. How much does it cost to find serious irregularities?" The blood drained from Richard's face. "Where did you get this? An inspector you tried to bribe has a conscience. He recorded everything, so you will leave. Now sign papers withdrawing objections and sell your share of the company. In exchange, I won't turn you into the federal police." "You can't?" "I can, because otherwise tomorrow you will be arrested for corruption. And with this public visibility, no lawyer will save you." Richard was cornered. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Now leave and never come near this family again." Richard left to booze from the crowd. Charles sat down, his legs giving out. "Do you really have this evidence?" "I do. I investigated Richard a week ago. I found much worse things. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to be sure and didn't want you to worry." Gabriel looked at Henry with admiration. "You risked everything for us." "I did what was right. Richard has been poisoning my business for years. You gave me the courage to face him." Mary hugged her father, crying, "I'm so proud." The next morning the hearing was quick. With the recordings, the judge lifted the ban and ordered an investigation against the inspectors. Smith and Son was cleared, but when they left the courthouse, there were over 200 people waiting. Old clients, neighborhood residents, Lincoln High School, students, journalists. When they saw Charles and Gabriel, they erupted in applause. Justice was served. Gabriel, Gabriel. Gabriel looked at that crowd and felt something new, belonging to something bigger, knowing that his talent had touched real people. Charles hugged him, crying, "We did it, son." "No, father, you did it. You raised me right, taught me everything. You gave me a reason to keep going. After your mother died, you were my only reason." Henry watched from a distance with Mary. "He reminds me so much of Ryan, but Gabriel is not Ryan. He is someone new you are, helping. And that is beautiful in the same way. I wasted 5 years locked in pain. I thought honoring Ryan meant never moving on. And now I know that honoring Ryan means doing just that. Helping talented boys is what my son would have wanted." 3 months later, Smith and Son was unrecognizable. The small space had been expanded, occupying 2 neighboring properties, state-of-the-art equipment, hydraulic lifts, diagnostic computers, everything a mechanic could dream of. The new sign read, "Smith and Son, Automotive Excellence Center in partnership with Vance Imports, where talent meets opportunity." The inauguration gathered hundreds of people. Gabriel, in a new uniform, made the presentation. "This workshop has always been more than work. It was where I learned that knowledge transforms lives, where my father taught me that honesty is worth more than profit, where I discovered that talent doesn't need money, it just needs opportunity." Applause echoed. "Today, we open not just a renovated workshop but a training center. We will offer free courses for neighborhood youth, scholarships for the best. We will prove that opportunity changes destinies." Charles approached the microphone shyly. "I'm not good with words, but I want to thank those who changed our lives." Henry Vance could have continued laughing at my son, but he chose to see beyond prejudice. He chose to believe. "Thank you, my friend." Henry stepped up, emotional. "I thank you. You saved me from myself. You reminded me why living is worth it." He looked up at the sky. "Ryan, wherever you are, I hope you are proud." At the end of the day, when the crowd dispersed, Henry, Mary, Charles and Gabriel sat in the new office, a glass-walled room, air-conditioned, with modern computers. "I can't believe this is real," Gabriel said. "It's real." "Because you earned it," Henry replied. "Every piece of equipment here was earned with talent." Mary returned with a box. "Gabriel, my father asked me to keep this for you." Gabriel opened it and found old but impeccable tools. "They belonged to Ryan," Henry explained, his voice choked. "He got them when he turned 10. I kept them after we lost him, but I think he would want you to have them." Gabriel held a small wrench. "Mr. Henry, I can't." "You can, because you will use them to do what Ryan dreamed of, fixing the world, one machine at a time." Gabriel hugged the tools to his chest. "I will take care of them, I promise. They are yours now." And Ryan is happy, knowing that his legacy continues. They stayed there for hours, talking about dreams, future plans. Gabriel asked, "Henry, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I want to have graduated in mechanical engineering, expanded this center to other cities, so that no talented child is left behind due to lack of opportunity. And you will succeed, I'm sure." Charles stood up, extending his hand. To true partners. Henry shook it. To true friends. Gabriel and Mary joined in, 4 hands united. There are talents that transform lives, Mary said. To second chances, Gabriel added. Outside, the sun was setting over New York. In that small corner, in a workshop saved from destruction, 4 people had proven that kindness conquers cruelty, talent overcomes prejudice, and love can change the world. Gabriel looked at Ryan's tools and made a silent promise. He would honor that gift by being the best version of himself, not just for him, but for everyone who believed, because in the end, the dirty mechanic, ridiculed on some random morning, had learned the most important lesson. Talent doesn't need wealth to shine, it just needs a chance. And when that chance meets hard work, humility, and with a pure heart, there is no force capable of preventing success. 10 years later, Gabriel Smith, at 22 years old, received the award for Best Mechanical Engineering Student in the United States. On stage, he thanked his father Charles, who taught him everything, Henry Vance, who gave him opportunities, and Ryan, who, even though he wasn't here, inspired him to never give up. Smith & Son had 12 locations in New York. Each one offered free courses, employed local youth, maintaining the philosophy. Profit is important, but dignity is priceless. Charles ran the company alongside Henry. They were more than just business partners. They were family. Mary had become a mechanical engineer working at Vance, but spent weekends in the workshop teaching for free. And Gabriel became exactly what everyone believed he could be. Not just a brilliant mechanic, but an exceptional human being who used his talent to uplift others, because that cruel bet had transformed into the most beautiful story of redemption that New York had ever seen. And every time someone asked Gabriel what his greatest repair was, he would reply, it wasn't the Rolls-Royce, it was fixing the heart of a man who had forgotten how to love. And in return, he fixed my entire life. The end of the story. Music.